Alright guys, so this is the last two examples from the lesson we did on block day. We didn't quite get enough time in class to finish it up, but it does have a lot of similar processes to what you did in your lesson in class. These ones are more of the application problems, so make sure you read through the whole sentences and underline important things. So this one you've got two trees that we're comparing. You're still going to be doing the proportions like we talked about. So same type of idea as that. So make sure you underline important stuff. Got smaller tree is that tall, and we're comparing shadows with their trees. And then we have a larger tree. We know its shadow, and it's that long. Okay, and it's got a nice picture there for you, so you make sure you understand which ones go with which. So really we're comparing trees with their shadows. That's the proportion that we're kind of working with here. Okay, now there's large tree and small tree, so make sure you match up which one goes with which. In fact, I'm going to underline my smaller tree in red and match it with its shadow. That way I know red is for the small tree and black is for the larger tree. So we've got my tree height for the small tree is 10.5 feet. And that matches with the shadow, that's 11.25 feet. Okay. Now remember, what's the thing that you're actually looking for here? Which one is your x? Because you can't have everything filled in if you're trying to look for something. Well, in the other fraction for your large tree, and I'm actually going to label this section. This is small tree. This will be large tree. For the large tree, do you know its height or do you know its shadow? Well, you know its shadow. Okay, and this is something that they can actually do as well. We talked about this when we did that activity on block day. Sometimes you don't know the heights of certain things like buildings or flagpoles, and it's not necessarily easy to go grab a tape measure and see how tall it is. But they can use things like shadows, which are easier to measure, or people in pictures to figure out the proportion, to at least get a general idea. So since we don't know how tall the tree is, we've got x in that spot and 17.5 on the bottom. And some of you might have already figured this out. I saw some of you setting up some proportions earlier on the block day when I was here. So if you do get the same answer as us, awesome. If not, maybe try and do it the way we've set it up. So cross multiply like we talked about. Let's move that down a little bit. Okay, so remember you're going to be multiplying the diagonal ones basically. So we've got 11.25x is equal to, let's calculate that out, 10.5 times 17.5. That gives you 183.75 if I typed it in right. Divide both sides, pretty easy algebra from there. And you should get that x is about 16.33 feet. And I just rounded it to the nearest hundredth. And I know it's feet because everything else in the problem is feet. And this is how tall the actual tree is. Now make sure to check, does this seem reasonable? Okay, well with the smaller tree, the shadow was a little bit longer. And the taller tree has a shadow of 17.5 feet. 16 is a little bit less, so that seems pretty reasonable. Seems like it works proportionally with the rest of the problem. You can always check by plugging 16 in and seeing if you get it correct when you cross multiply as well. Okay, make sure if you need to, you can rewind, pause, whatever you need to do. Make sure you get that down in the notes, then we'll move on to the other example that we missed. All right, so this one you're finding a couple different things. Not necessarily a story problem, but definitely could be applied to different things that might have these kinds of shapes. So make sure you pay attention to the fact that you're finding two things here. That means you need to have two answers. Okay, well I've got one with an x here. Okay, so let's focus on that guy first. So if I'm going to be setting up a proportion, obviously x has to be a part of it. And we'll put this as shape 1 and shape 2, just to kind of keep our proportion figured out. And you're comparing those two shapes, so it's shape 1 versus shape 2. All right, well, what side in shape 2 does x match with? Okay, well, that's 10. It's pretty easy to tell in this picture. It's one of the two parallel sides, and it's the bigger one. So it's not quite as crazy as some of the other shapes we've dealt with, where they're a little bit trickier to see. Now, I still have to set it equal to some other fraction. I can't just use one side, but I gotta be kind of smart about which one I pick. I can't just pick any of them because they're not necessarily gonna have both numbers correct. And now it's important to make sure you know which ones match with which. In my picture, I don't see anything that's telling me what letters go with what, so I kind of have to rotate it in my head. If you rotate this back about one turn, this side matches with this side. And we already figured out that matches with that. That means this one has to match with this one, and then this guy with this guy. And you can kind of tell by the slant of ZV and AF that they're the ones that match together. They're a little bit more of a steep side than the other ones. Okay, now let me erase my color here until we decide what color we're going to do. Okay, now which set of sides do I want to use? The reds or the blues? Okay, I can't use the black because there's no numbers there. The reds I could use, but that has Y in it. I don't want to include X and Y in the same proportion, then I'm going to have some issues. So that means I'm going to have to use the blue one, which is going to make it a lot easier because they are both numbers. So again, it's got to be shape 1 versus shape 2. You got to keep your comparisons the same. So 9 has to go over 6. Okay, so cross multiply. Nice, easy cross multiplication with that. We've got 6x is equal to 90. Do some basic algebra there. Divide both sides by 6. And we get 15 for x. Again, check and make sure, does that seem reasonable? 15 over 10 equals 9 over 6. Yes, that does seem pretty reasonable. Okay, and you can even cross multiply to double check. 15 times 6 is 90, and that's exactly what we're trying to get. Okay, so first one, not too bad. Now we got to solve for y. Obviously, that means we have to include the sides that have y. Again, you're comparing shape 1 versus shape 2. Make sure you set it up correctly. So 12 matches with 3y minus 1 in the second shape. Okay, now I can use the side that has x now that I know what number it is, but I'd rather just stick to the proportion I already had. So I'm going to use this guy up here and just bring that down. Still 9 over 6. Just that way I have numbers that are pretty solid. In case I mess something up with x, I don't mess up both my problems. All right, and then from there it's cross multiplying. Now you got to be careful with this guy right here. Make sure to put parentheses around it because it's more than one piece. You're going to be doing some distributing. If you don't put parentheses, you're going to have some issues when you try and cross multiply. But other than that, it's pretty similar to what you've been doing. So we have 72 equals 9 times 3y minus 1. Like I said, that parenthesis was there for a reason, so make sure you distribute. Get 27y minus 9. Got a little more algebra to do than usual, but nothing too scary. Move the 9 over first. Get 27y is equal to 81. Divide both sides. You get y is equal to 3. All right, go back and check. Did you solve for everything? Solve for x, solve for y. Awesome. Okay. Here's the notes again real quick if you needed to finish catching up. Feel free to rewind, pause, whatever you need to do. There's teachers in the room that you can ask for help as well. or you can email us later if you're having some issues. Once you finish copying these 2 examples, finish the 2 examples on the back of this page that you did not do for homework the other day. Should be the first and 4th problem under independent practice. Again, ask for help. Some of these you have some little things you might miss. If you're struggling, ask so you can get it figured out. We'll probably have a quiz on this sometime next week. When you're done with those 2 problems, then you can move on to the other video, which goes over the example we missed on Thursday.